Welcome to New Orleans, day 2. We're going to start, everybody, that's what you need to say about 3 a.m. when you're in one of the bars and you're in one of these places is, I can't do it sober. Laissez-les, les bon temps roulés. Did I pass the New Orleans test? Good. So we're going to talk about the agency of the future, transformation of the agency model. I am sure even if you read this morning's trades that came out of both London and New York, there's at least 3 articles that talk about the death of the agency. I mean, come on, we all know better. It's like saying, is TV dead? Or maybe print is dead, but maybe TV isn't. But the agency is not dead, it is alive, it is changing. We have 3 great practitioners today to share some fascinating insights. In the middle is Deb Baudry from Sapient Razorfish in Chicago, Rob Davis, president of Starcom worldwide, and Rob Schwartz, the global leader of agency services for IBM. I think 2 Chicago and 1 New York, right?
That doesn't happen often.
I know, it's usually the other way around, so we're very excited. As all of you know, you have an opportunity to ask questions via the publishing app. Catherine, I assume they know it's on the app. Go through if you have some questions you want to ask. This is very lively. This has been a great panel to have preview conversations. The first thing I would want to ask is, your initial thoughts on the topic. How is the agency transforming in 2017? I'll go to each of you a quick insight.
Yeah, I mean, I think kind of as you alluded to paraphrase Mark Twain, the rumors of the death of the agency have been greatly exaggerated.
That seems geographically appropriate.
Exactly. So yeah, I've actually, an anomaly. I've been with the same agency for my entire career. So I've been with some version of Starcom, Leo Burnett, Publicis for over 25 years. So I have some folks that I mentor that came to me in the last couple of years going, it's dead, we're over, it's dead. And I kind of shake my head and go, look, we have to change, obviously. But it's a pendulum, right? And things kind of swing back and forth year after year. So I think it's really just about making sure that, we provide utility to clients. In our case, it's data. And then we were even just talking about just the humanity of client interactions and the need for face-to-face and things like this. And so for me, I think that kind of the future of the agency is about finding that perfect intersection of data-driven, digitally centric, but also finding humanity in how we ultimately need to interact with consumers.
Gene, that's a great Twitter handle.
My perspective comes from the fact that I started in the agency business and then I left for about a decade and I went and worked as a client. And one of the things that struck me when I first saw the topic is it doesn't matter what the label is. At the end of the day, I think that the success of the future agency is that we make it easier to work with us, for clients to work with us, regardless of what we end up being called. And one of the things that struck me a couple of years ago when I went to Cannes, there was a person on stage that said something about the ticket to success being collaboration and not combat. And I think that as an anchoring notion for whatever we end up deciding to call ourselves is actually critical, because that is ultimately what clients want. And some of you guys heard from Peter the other day, just make it easy to work with us. And if that means you have to reach across lines and you have to go outside of your holding company confines, or you have to reach out to a technology partner or consultancy, we have to be open to that.
I think that's a great point. But I would just add one more thing. And for me, agencies are the single greatest purveyors of creativity in the history of mankind, right? And not just creativity in the motion picture design discipline, but in any discipline, right? We unlock creativity in any discipline. Analytics, relationships. So the question is, how can you bring more creativity to bear to your clients? That I think is what the question is for us in the future. And that question is broader than the marketing communication space. How do you bring it to bear for the enterprise? Servicing, product development. That's the mission from the CEO to any CMO right now. You own the growth and change agenda. How are agencies going to fill that space beyond just this little space that they've always occupied, which is marketing communications? I think that's where our success has to come from, is how do we take the skills we've always had and deploy that more broadly across an entire client's business?
Well, based on that question, one of the biggest challenges that when you talk to CMOs and you talk to agency CEOs is the talent issue. How are we growing, nurturing, and cultivating talent today? A lot of publishers are hiring agency people because they think that they can open doors. A lot of agency people are trying to find people in new disciplines. Where do we find, nurture, and grow talent in this business?
Yeah, for us, I mean, it's a great question. It is one of the biggest challenges and one of the most important things we can do, right? We say talent's our most valuable resource, and it's time we kind of put our money where our mouth is, so to speak. So, we're doing a number of things. From a recruiting standpoint, we're trying to recruit differently. I mean, bluntly, being kind of a Midwest-based agency, we've relied heavily over the many years, Big Ten schools, kind of traditional places, and there's still great value in that. There's great talent coming from those sources, but increasingly we're finding ourselves having to broaden where we look for talent, finding that mix of folks who are kind of analytical and data and digitally minded, but also creative. And so certainly we're looking at kind of like STEM schools, STEM organizations, diversity, just diverse groups, both ethnic and religious and sexual orientation diversity, but also diversity of thought. And so, we're trying to really start looking at different ways of recruiting. And then in terms of retention, it's applying a lot of that similar mentality. We are looking at more kind of sourcing from crowdsourcing, so to speak. Tell us what actually motivates you and what actually, it's amazing, right? Ask people what would keep them there. It's amazing what you get when you actually ask people. We've got a group called the Next Gen Board. So our board of directors now is made up of young junior folks who are making suggestions about what the future of the company should be, so they feel part of it and they can help shape where we go. We have things like we call the Greenlight Grant, which is anyone from the organization, including administrative assistants, all the way up to directors, can have a recommendation for an improvement at the agency that either helps our operations or helps a client. And it's a $10,000 prize, cash, and your idea gets implemented. So,
I have an idea.
Yeah. I have a bunch too. For whatever reason, they're not going with mine. But anyway, so it's just a number of those types of things that are giving a little bit more control to the broader base.
Rob, just before we go on, do y'all still do Starcom University?
Yeah, we don't call it that anymore, but it's a really in-depth training program. It's basically a college-level course, and accredited and certified and have to pass and do group presentations. And so we have history majors, we have art majors. For media, I actually applied. I was telling some folks last night that, I mentioned I've been there my whole career. I applied for the wrong job by accident. When I started, I literally brought in here's my, my painting and my band I was in and my, my writing sample. And the interviewer went, cool, how are you at math? And I went, oh, math. But I managed to obviously find the right intersection. And so, trying to we can train on how to do media, frankly. What we're looking for is smart, creative, interesting people.
Deb?
Yeah, I think one of the things, I feel really lucky working where I am because the thing that I've noticed with the staff that we've got, and it's largely millennial because we're a digital technology firm at the core, and so we hire people that are digital natives, and guess what? They're not my age. One of the things that I think is really critical for us is that we really make an effort to tap into the orientation of our talent to create something that didn't exist before. So what we've noticed is that the people that are attracted to Sapient Razorfish and the ones that want to stay, and one of our greatest retention tools is the ability to give them a problem and a clean white sheet of paper and say, go nuts, guys. If you can build something, if you can harness technology in a different way or hack it or use it in a way that nobody thought of before and solve a client business problem, that is really pretty inspiring to the people in our organization. And of course, every job has stuff that ends up getting more routine and all that kind of stuff, but we make a really conscientious effort of being able to provide those types of projects to just about everybody at some critical juncture, whether they're about to get promoted or they're ready for the next challenge. Something like that really helps keep people in the fold, and I feel like we're pretty lucky. We're in a good position to be able to do that just because of the nature of the kind of work that we do.
Yeah, from my perspective, it's about mission. So how do we connect people to this notion of mission of changing the world, right? We are undergoing enormous amounts of change in our own business in every aspect of it, not just the consulting business, but our core business. And yet, we are still focused on changing the world. And I find that really brings out the best. We were talking about this earlier, this notion of, and I hate this millennial generation crap, but I'm going to do it just for the hell of it. Please note in tweets that I've air quoted it. There is clearly a sense of mission orientation in that generation younger than mine. How about that? And I think to tap into that is the best way to open up a flow of talent and a commitment level in that talent that you're not going to get if you're not oriented that way. And so from my perspective, yes, we're doing training programs and we're doing all that kind of stuff that if I were first, I would have said. But since I'm last, I'd tell you that really it's linking a mission, a sense of something greater than self to the people that you're bringing in and to their daily lives. And I think that's what we try to do no matter what part of the IBM organization you're in.
And then one of the trade rags this morning, it says the new big perk is helping pay for student loans for new requirees and home mortgage deposit down. That's what some of the things they're looking at, so it's very interesting timing. You said a word that I want to talk about. Many of us through the years have had to deal with it now. It's starting to come to fruition. Last night, Ms. Reed actually, and I think a very thought-provocative speech, one of her questions was the challenge of the consultancies. The McKinseys, the Deloittes, the PwCs, they are playing in our business. They're not AAA right now. They are in major league. How do you know? Each of you represent very big organizations, represent significant players. Your thoughts on the consultancies? Who wants to tackle that one first?
Pass. No.
Pass.
I know that's a very challenging issue, but that is not going to go away.
No, it is, it's fair, and we do increasingly look at, so I represent Starcom, which, arguably a more media-centric lens, but, we also see ourselves as consultants to clients in a lot of ways. Yeah. Excuse me. So we're very much seeing the consultancies you mentioned as increasing competition. There's no denying that. And they're worthy competition in a lot of ways. A couple things that are good that have come out of it is I would say kind of two key things. One is it really forces us to look at every single day with an existing client as a pitch. Because it's so easy for them to come in and they have different kinds of engagements and frankly to pick our pockets a bit. And so we've got to challenge ourselves to think differently and continually bringing new things to our clients and not take a single moment for granted. The second thing is kind of getting back to what you had said earlier, which is it's also forcing us to look at more enterprise-wide solutions. So it's no longer good enough to say, hey, here's an incredible media plan, here's a great insight. It's about the consumer-facing side, certainly, but it's also about the whole enterprise infrastructure, data and technology stack, all of those types of things. I think what we potentially as agencies can continue to have a leg up on versus consultancies is true end-to-end solutions for clients. So we're in it for the long haul. I mean, a lot of our clients, we've had Kellogg, Allstate, we're 60 plus years, right? So we're not going anywhere. We're in it, invested in their business, literally skin in the game with most of the way our contracts are structured. And so when they win, we win. And when I say end-to-end, meaning from planning and insights through to actual execution, which, at least at the moment, most of the consultancies aren't playing through that entire spectrum to the degree that agencies are.
Yeah, I mean, I would just build on that. There's no doubt that the consultancies are here to stay. They're bona fide competitors. They're very smart. They're very good at what they do. At Sapient Razorfish, we compete against them a lot, actually. And so there's a couple of things that I feel like are sort of differentiating for us, but also I think the birthright of people that have grown up in this industry a little bit. And the first one is creativity. And I go back to something Rob said, which is the downside of the common definition of creativity is everybody automatically thinks of creative in a conventional creative agency sense of the word, but creativity is just really original problem solving, of a problem that a client presents you. And I think that agency people are hardwired from the get-go to be oriented more that way than consultants who think a little bit more like our clients think. And so that's a good thing for them in some ways, but it also provides an opportunity for us to have a competitive advantage versus the consultants, because we are just wired slightly differently, that we're wired to think originally about a problem, and I think that's a huge advantage. And then the other piece that is interesting, I think, for agencies against, in this world where consultancies are encroaching, is that we have never been in a situation where we were lucky enough to be able to write a really beautiful blueprint solution in a deck and leave it on a table and walk away. We have always been in a situation where we had to make it real and live and execute. And almost every agency person knows at the end of the day they're on the hook for the execution. And that too is an advantage for us, and I think it's something we should not be afraid to exploit. There's great honor in making it real instead of just talking about the potential of what it could be.
That's a great answer. To some extent, I'm here representing the enemy, right? So I sit within the consulting organization. There's 125,000 of us. It's a little scary. Here's what I'd tell you. I think Rob's point, which is this notion of creativity deployed across the enterprise, is absolutely where the consultancy angle is. I know that's what I'm driving within the brand that I run, IBM iX. That our mission, because we're never going to make 30 seconds with Joe Pitka, right? Like, that's not the business we're in. And we're never going to be in that. And nobody's ever going to pick us to do it. But we can bring creativity and innovation across the entire experience, and that's what clients want to hear from us. So my challenge to the agencies, and again, I come from there, is that they embrace that as well, because I really think that's what has to happen. That's what has to happen for the CMO role to be successful, right? We're just going to continue to fire CMOs if we can't get better partnership for them from their support organizations, agencies, consultancies, all of us, for growth and change agendas. That is what their job is, right? I interviewed the Bank of Ireland CMO 2 weeks ago to Mexico. I said, "Give one word, what's your job?" Change. Change. Change the people, change what they think about the place, change the employee behavior, change the mission that we serve. That's what we've got to serve. And in order to do that, what agencies have always done, what skills they've always brought to bear, that notion of execution, that notion of creativity in every single discipline, that's what they've got to bring to bear across the span of the organization in a much broader way. And I think that's how they combat me.
We're going to go to questions relatively quick in the audience, so if you have any, let us know. Catherine and all will be walking around. It's January 1, 2020, pivotal time in our business. What's gone away? What's the big fear of missed out? What should we know? AI, whatever. What's gone away, and what is something we should be on the outlook for?
I mean, AI is obviously the buzzword right now. I think, something to think about there is 5-5-5, right? So in the last 5 years, investment in AI has gone from about $500 million to $5 billion. So it's real. It's a buzz, but it's real. I think the trick is, how do you move it from a novelty to a utility? And so at the publicist level, there's a lot of hoopla made about Marcel and what exactly that is, and none of us really know. But the intent of it...
you're not doing awards anymore.
Well, we know the impact is, I don't get to go to Cannes next year. But the reality is, I think it's actually kind of interesting that the focus is on taking an 80,000 person organization. So it's not meant to replace creativity. It's not meant to help us make ads or media buys. It's meant to help us connect to one another as companies get bigger and bigger. And so really what that was designed to do is using artificial intelligence to find each other and help each other supplement and complement each other's skill sets. So it's really in the near term designed for us, at least, as an internal job enhancement tool. So I think that will be really interesting to see where that heads in 3 years.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I have the exact same reaction. It's the hot buzzword now, along with a few others that we could probably come up with on stage right now. I feel like it is just another tool to help us make people's lives better. And those people could be your clients and the experience that they're having within their own organization. It could be customers, it could be consumers, it could be internal, the way we're using it within our holding company right now, which is to make it easier for our clients to access 80,000 people's worth of talent around the world. So I don't think it's necessarily going to go anywhere. I think it will hang around as long as it actually performs its function, which is to make things better for people, the end user, whoever that might be, a customer, a client, an employee, a consumer.
Let's see, what is it, January 1st, 2020, is that the date?
What's that big fear of missing out, and like what is, you wish had gone away?
Yeah, well, I can tell you right now, we're going to be sitting on the precipice of the single most divisive election in the most important country on the face of the planet. So what I would say is, what are brands and corporations, what are their statements going to be about that? How are they going to try to knit people together in a way that they haven't done in the past? What is their obligation to a sense of mission and a sense of value and a sense of character? I think those questions, yes, I should be saying cognitive because that's what my marketing organization wants me to say. And yes, that's incredibly important, Watson, blah, blah. But I actually think the more interesting thing is, what are brands going to say about the state of the world at that time? Because I tell you what, if you think this year's been rough, that year's going to be unbelievable. And we've got 3 years of more division to get through. So I think we face a real challenge as people that steward brands and build connections with customers, in that the connections that those people feel with their countries, with other people, are disintegrating in ways that I think we haven't seen in probably several generations. So what role and what obligation do we play in that? And I think that's a really central question. So for me, when I think about it, that's what I think about.
Thanks, Dr. Doom.
Yeah. In other news, maybe the Yankees will have won a World Series again.
If you really think, let's hope not. If you think about that, that's really fascinating, because this is the 21st year of digital media. So think about it, we're as an adult. So in 2020, we go into that 25 demography, 25-34, which is always the most desired time. Interesting thoughts, all three of you. Let's go to the board. There were several interesting questions. How do you motivate younger employees to go beyond their often sense of entitlement to feel ownership, to encourage their best work? I think that's a word, entitlement. It should just go away. How do you motivate? Rob, obviously.
So tell us how you really feel.
Yeah.
I know moderators should not opine, so I'll throw it out to you.
I'll tell you what, I'll challenge the proposition a little bit. Of course, there's always, in any group, there's entitled people. I think what I've found personally and through the agency experience is, particularly with the younger generation, it's not so much entitlement, but it's clarity of path. So it's not so much, very rarely does somebody come to me and say, why aren't I promoted? What they come to me and say is, help me understand what this very specific steps are to promotion and to the next level. And bluntly, we haven't historically been terrific at outlining that. And so I think that's one of the key ways that we try to help keep folks motivated is talk about, we publish job specs. I mean, when I started, to understand what a president did, it was like a huge mystery. It seemed like they'd play golf and go to lunches a lot, and that seemed cool. But what are the expectations for each role? What are the expectations? We always say time doesn't matter, and it's based on your skills. But let's be honest, time does matter a little bit. So let's just be honest about that. That you're probably not going to get promoted after 6 months of being in your current role. So I think that's one piece of it. The other piece of it is, we've all seen these studies where we did a study a few years ago that we had each employee rank out of 20 or 30 factors what were the most motivating to them, and then we had their managers rank, and they literally are inverse. Right? So we always, it's got to be money. Money's number one, right? But you go down the list and it's communication, autonomy. These are the things that motivate people, right? And so, money's obviously some factor in there. But it's about kind of aligning those two lists and realizing that what we think people want and what people actually want when you ask them are not the same.
Yeah, one of the things I would also agree with you. I would challenge the premise. We were talking about this a little bit earlier, and I think it's worth raising. I think that the gift that the younger employees are bringing into the business world is a requirement or a demand for, yes, communication, for integrity, for being a little bit more purpose-driven. They're bringing so many of the more human decency factors back into the workplace and I think that's actually a gift for us as an industry, because I think that it was very easy for us to fall away from that as we chased profit and margin and all the things that you chase when you're running a business. And it took a big, powerful group of people, because it's one of the largest generations coming forward, that placed value on the things that mattered when I started, and then they kind of fell away, and now they're coming back. And I think those things that place emphasis on clarity of communication, explaining what it takes to accomplish and get to the next level, having integrity, doing things at work that are not about work, but are about giving back to the world and being a purpose-driven organization. I know a lot of those things are said over and over again, but actually very few companies do them and do them well, and I think that is a critical part of attracting and retaining and keeping this group of young people functioning at the high level that they are perfectly capable of functioning at.
You see that a lot in the journals about the purpose-driven organization coming out and outcome-driven business models. Rob, I'm going to say this. We want to go to the audience, walk around. Rachel, we have a couple of questions. We only have a limited amount of time, so.
Actually, and this is a question for all three of you. How do you balance creative or executional excellence with business profitability?
With business?
Business profitability. In essence, how do you make creative and profits work hand in hand?
Yeah, no offense, that assumes that they're at polar opposites. And I guess I'd argue that I don't see it that way. So I know I've said this 10 times already, and I'll keep saying it. Creativity is not the purview of the motion picture department, right? It is the inspiration and beating heart of what the agency business has always been about. And it is what has made profitable businesses, not just for agencies, but for the brands that they serve since the beginning of this business. And so, to me, great creative thought in any discipline is what powers business success and profitability, right? This is like an ancient example, but for every don't leave home without it / just do it / priceless / pick your favorite, those are billion-dollar ideas, right? Those are billion-dollar ideas executed with creativity in all disciplines. And so I don't see it as a binary decision between, all right, we have these crazy people that sit in the basement and occasionally, have too many drinks or whatever, and then come up from the magic factory and do whatever. And if we could just get them to do it faster and more profitably, we'd be all right. That's not how I look at it. And I think if more of us sort of looked at it that way as like a real business investment, then I think we'd be better in shape. And I think the good news is, you talk to CEOs. I've talked to probably 7 or 8, Fortune 500 CEOs in the past, 9 months or so. They are desperate for things that grow their business. They are open to the notion of creativity in any discipline in a way that they haven't been in some time. And so I think that brings with it a real opportunity too.
I think, though, I might just add, though, that I agree, but that's kind of for the big kind of macro campaign creativity. What you might be getting at is there's tactical, right? There's tactical executions that we argue about, particularly in the media side, endlessly. Oh, is that really going to drive business? And so one of the things we've done is developed a proprietary tool that helps measure the interrelations, right? Because you go, okay, well, was that successful because of that interesting creative opportunity, execution, or was it successful because we had a lot of TV and other digital, going on? And so we've actually got some analytics that help map out and assign values to each component to help us get out of those constant arguments about, well, did that really work? And that was kind of risky. Maybe if we just put it all back into, more traditional, we'd be safer. And so it helps kind of parse that out at a more tactical micro level.
Yeah, if that was a question about sort of the holy grail of attribution, you're on your own.
We're getting there.
That's a moment.
As a quick question, how does and the complexity that China brings as not only the fast side of the consumer business growing, but also as a digital media and an overall media buyer impact your plans for the agency of the future?
Was it China? Is that what you said?
Yeah, well, China and all of the other growing developing countries, but definitely China, since they're the number 2 media spender in the world already.
I mean, so I oversee a couple of global businesses, and a very practical reality is just a lot of our the things we take for granted as U.S.-based companies. Kellogg's cereal awareness in China is, I think it's 1.1%. It's at 99% in the U.S. It's 1.some%. As my wife happens to be Chinese, she's like, yeah, we don't understand why you people eat cold, wet corn for breakfast. Right, and so if nothing else, it forces us to take certainly there's technological advances, there's pirating, there's things like that are very real because of having to deal with censorship in China particularly. But I think beyond the technology, it's actually consumer understanding. It helps us get back to basics and strip down a lot of brands that we've relied on 20, 30, 40 years of heritage awareness. And we have to get back to what are really the core propositions of these products here. So in my experience, that's a lot of what kind of the emerging markets are helping reteach us.
Yeah, and I would add that I would echo what Rob said. The idea of really having a tight handle on what the consumer or customer experience is, and then having a business model that's modular so that you can bring the services to bear against whatever that experience and the problems associated with the current experiences are. Bring them together, break them apart. Bring them together, break them apart, and use the different services that your organization offers in new and different permutations every time you're trying to solve a problem based on what the consumer issue or customer issue is. I think is something that we learn because it's changing so quickly that you have to be able to have that agility and that fluidity to be able to address the issues. And that is the pressure I feel like we see from some of the emerging markets is they're moving really quick. And we need to be able to adopt that kind of approach in our business in the States.
So what gets you up in the morning to think about what is the operating model of the agency going forward? What do you think it is? Last question. What great way to wrap up. Is it AOR? Is it project? Is it, what is it?
I don't have a short answer to this, but I'll try.
10 seconds.
No stress. There's a clock counting down here. It's very stressful.
Look, I do still think there's a role for integrating disciplines for clients, right? The fractionalization of the RFP has left clients with a lot of problems because they have to try to integrate on their side of the house. They have limited resources to do that. So I do still think that there's hope for an AOR, a redefined integrator role. Not necessarily all within one holding company, working with external partners, working with technology companies. I still think that role is necessary. That's not 10 seconds.
Okay, Deb?
I would go back actually to what I said at the very beginning. I think that the part of what's so exciting about the potential of the agency of the future is that you don't know what you're going to confront every single day when you walk into the office, and the ability to be open-minded about.
That was very funny, actually. No, you really don't, do you?
You don't. But the ability to, approach everything from a fresh perspective and with the notion of collaboration and being willing to reach across the aisle to lots of different kinds of partners, whether they're within your family or not, I think is genuinely interesting because that different diversity of thought coming from a different perspective is always going to make the opportunity fresher, and it's going to force you to think about things through a lens that you may not have walked into the office that day thinking about, and I think that's really the exciting part of where we're going.
For me, I'm going to steal other Rob's comment from earlier, which is just really about being purpose-driven. I mean, if the question is really what gets you up in the morning, what gets you up in the morning is not necessarily selling another box of whatever, but it is helping make positive impact in the world. And as a leader in our agency, enabling other people to do that. Be it Airbnb, which is about connecting people, and particularly in difficult times. A Lego, which is bringing play to 300 million children in imagination play around the world. That's what continues to kind of get me out of bed in the morning.
Some great stuff. I love the 5x5. I love the comment about the pitch every day because I think that's something that sometimes we all forget in a business. Some great takeaways I'm sure we'll see. I know several of you in here share a lot. I'm hoping that we'll get some great summary. everybody, it's very early. I know many of you were taking notes and not multitasking during this presentation of these three great people. But Rob, and Deb, thank you very much. Let's give them a big round of applause.